Hi everyone, Michelle here with Next Chapter Counseling. I have another weekly question for you guys. And the question this week was, what's the best way to deal with conflict with your partner? And this is a big question and in some ways a challenging one to answer because every person and every couple argues and has disagreements differently. I could light up 5 couples in front of me and tell all of them to have a disagreement about housework, and each of those disagreements would look vastly different. So, on the one hand, this is a difficult question to answer, and on the other hand, it's very simple, and what I'm about to say may seem a bit obvious, but my guess is you may not have had this conversation with your partner before. So, my answer, which I'm going to go more in depth about, is to just ask your partner. Ask them, okay, if there's a serious issue that I want to bring up with you, what's the best way for me to go about doing that? If we're disagreeing about something, what can help the conversation get back on track? To talk about it. Because chances are you and your partner have different preferences when it comes to arguments. People tend to have things that they want or they prefer or that they need. And chances are what you want, prefer, and need is different than your partner. So bringing up this conversation is important. And there's 2 times where I really recommend having this conversation to have it be most effective. The first is if you're new in your relationship, maybe you guys just started dating and you guys haven't had like that first like big fight yet or anything like that. This is a good time to have this conversation and to basically say something to your partner like, hey, I know we really haven't had any big disagreements yet, but I kind of want to know that down the line, when issues may come up between us, what are some do's and don'ts for me to know about with you of what you would prefer and what you would really like me to avoid if we're having an argument? The other situation where having this conversation could be helpful is if you and your partner have been having a lot of disagreements lately and you're at this point of feeling kind of lost or confused about what to do differently. And basically, when the two of you are calm, to sit down and just say, I know we've been arguing a lot lately, and sometimes the arguments have been going in a direction that neither of us want it to go in. And how can we do things differently? How can we learn more about each other and what will work better when we're in the middle of a conflict? So those are 2 times where having this conversation can work best. And I'm going to give you guys some questions just to think about today. You do not have to ask all these questions of your partner. You don't have to ask them in necessarily the exact way that I'm going to phrase them. But these are all things that are common pitfalls when a couple is having a disagreement. So this is just to get your mind working of what kinds of things you might want to talk about with your partner. The first is to talk about the timing of these disagreements. There's really not a good time to fight. Let's be honest. Nobody would say that there's a right time to do it, but typically there are definitely times where it tends to not go very well. Common times where this is when one or both of you have just gotten home from work, or right before bed. Those tend to be pretty off-limit times where if you have something to bring up, I wouldn't recommend doing it at those times. But really talking with your partner of, okay, when do they really want you to maybe not bring something up? And even if there's not a good time, when might be a better time? Some couples prefer to have serious conversations over dinner. Some couples prefer to have serious conversations if they're like going to be in the car for like at least 30 minutes together. That might be an okay time to bring something up. Some couples postpone all serious conversations until the weekends, just knowing that the weekdays there's too much going on. So talk with each other about this. Okay, if there's something on my mind that I do want to bring up with you, and I know it may be a tough conversation to have, when would be the best timing to do it? When would be kind of the lesser of the bad times to bring something up and see what they say and what you guys can decide together as a team. The other thing that's good to think about or to ask, and you may already know the answer to this next one, is how you guys communicate about problems. People tend to fall into one of two categories. The first category is people who tend to be like very short, direct, and to the point. The other category is people who are a little more long winded, detailed, want to really dive in and explore the issue and the problem. And if each of you are falling onto one of those two sides, you're probably having some miscommunication when you're disagreeing about something. The person who's pretty short and direct, they could come across as being insensitive or rude or not really like listening because they just want to get to the thing that's most important. The other person who's maybe a little more long-winded, they can come across as kind of like beating around the bush or not really getting to what they want to say. And both of these approaches can cause frustration with the other if you guys communicate differently. So this doesn't mean you necessarily need to vastly change how you communicate, though I do recommend each of you trying to alter it a little bit to meet more in the middle with each other, but to really just know, okay, just because my partner really just talks about things in a couple sentences or two, it doesn't mean they're trying to be rude or, again, like really callous about what I'm trying to say. Or just because my partner talks about this issue for 30 minutes, it doesn't mean that they are trying to avoid what they're trying to say, like this is their process. It's really just about understanding each other better. So kind of knowing how you guys talk about problems is really important so that you're not thrown off guard when you guys are communicating about the same thing in two very different ways. The final question that I encourage you guys to talk about or think about with your partner is if a conversation is getting really heated or getting to a point where it's just not going the way that either of you have wanted it to go, what do you guys each need to do either for yourselves or what do you need from your partner to get things back on track? A common thing that people often need is a break. Breaks can look different for different people. Some people only need like to go upstairs for 5 minutes and then they're good to go. Some people need to leave the house and they need to drive around for like 30 minutes to an hour before they feel ready to come back. So being able to know what your partner is going to need if a break is something that they say they want so that you know what to expect and that you're not thrown off guard. Same thing if you need a break. You want your partner to know what that's going to look like. Another common thing that people can sometimes be different on is physical touch. Some people, if things are getting really heated, like they just want a hug. Like they just want to know that you're still there with them, or they want you to put your hand on their hand, and that could be really calming. Some people, when they're really feeling overwhelmed, they're just not in a place to do that. Thinking about physical touch is the last thing on their mind. So, really being able to articulate to the other person what you may need. It doesn't mean that the person that you're talking to is just going to immediately say, "Oh, yeah, totally. I could absolutely do that for you." They may say, "Nope, that doesn't feel comfortable to me." But then at least you guys know, and at least you guys have talked about it. So it's important to have a bit of a game plan for if things are really getting escalated, what you each are going to do for yourself so that you can calm down and come back to the conversation in a better place. So, those are some starter ideas for how to talk about this with your partner, but that's my biggest piece of advice is just to ask them what things will work and not work for them if you guys are having a disagreement. So, have the conversation and save yourselves some trouble down the line so that the next disagreement you have goes a little bit smoother. If you have a question for me that you'd like me to answer in a future video, send me an email, nextchapter.michelle@gmail.com, and I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks.